Good morning. Before we start this morning's session, just a comment about questions. But yeah, I'm sure you have questions, questions popping up. And we haven't had interactive sessions so far where you've been able to ask questions. Partly, I'm assuming you're taking your questions into your groups. That's the opportunity you have. And there may be questions that you'd like to put to me, or that you might feel could be beneficial for others, a theme or a particular aspect of the practice of the teaching I'm presenting that you'd like to have more clarification about. Or even examples. And if that's the case, what I'd first like to try out is that you send an email to Taraloka, write your question down, be clear, what is it that I want to know, that I want to investigate more or have some more guidance about, as far as I can give that. And they'll pass those questions on to me, and I'll see then what I do with them. If I have a kind of make time for a question and answer session, or if I just incorporate those themes into the morning's presentations. Yeah. So I'll send them on to Taraloka. The email address will be appearing in the chat if it hasn't done so already. Okay, and again, I'll be starting with a poem from the Therigatha. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these are verses from women practitioners, the lineage that we're following in the footsteps of, from the Buddha and then the first women practitioners. And the poems I'm selecting, of course, they're somehow connected to the theme, but they're also, I'd also like us to get a sense of these women were also up against it, just like we are. Now, there were women from all walks of life and women facing all kinds of difficulties, existential difficulties as well, deep, deep pain. And wherever they were, whatever they were dealing with, that was where the practice took place. That was their, that was the ground of their practice. It was the soil and it was the manure, and out of that their practice flourished. So I'll read the poem. Today it's a poem by Vasati, who comes from Vasata. I'm assuming that's a place. And then we'll have a few minutes to sit with her experience and to just let in and be with whatever touches us. When a child dies, everyone grieves. But a mother's grief is different, not more real or more important. Just different. I can talk about it like this now. Back then, I just wandered from place to place. I don't know if I ate. I don't know if I slept. From the bottom of that darkness, I heard a voice. It was just a whisper, so I leaned towards it and became a bucket pulled slowly up from the bottom of a well. In the same way, I called out to my grief and drew it towards me. I held my grief and gently rocked it. Shh, I said, there, 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 there. People sometimes ask, wasn't it painful? Weren't you afraid? Yes, it was painful. So is giving birth. Oh, my heart, you mustn't fear the pain. So we're more or less approaching halfway through this retreat, and it's going deeper. Strong emotions are probably coming up for many of you. You're moving in closer to your experience. This connecting with what is there is happening. It's being highlighted. unfamiliar experiences. We're moving more and more, you could say, into the unknown, daring to go there at our own pace. And this is scary. We heard about the scariness last night. So at this point in the retreat, I usually kind of halfway through, I like to remind us of 3 attitudes, 3 ways of being on retreat. And the first is keep it simple. Whatever that, however that translates for you. If you feel it's full, you're full, it's too much, you're doing things, you're trying to get everything in, you're trying to apply everything, keep it simple. Please keep it simple. Do yourself that favor. Secondly, don't struggle. And keep going. The long, enduring heart. We all have it. And Vasati's experience of turning to her grief, gently rocking it. I think this is such a beautiful image of how we can be with whatever is there. Our Dharma life is all about opening the heart, freeing the mind. And sometimes in my metta practice, I like to use the phrases, may we all have ease of heart and peace of mind. And something about these words that what is in there, what that transports, what that communicates, what that touches me very deeply. So our practice, I could also say, what mindfulness is turning towards. It's nothing that we can't do. It's just turning towards, staying with what's there in a skillful, onward leading way. This is what mindfulness is. With a very, very light touch. And every moment of our life, every moment is the right moment to be mindful. Each moment of your experience is of equal value for this practice. And that's quite revolutionary. It's a complete shift in orientation to, I've got to get this done, I've got to first see to that, and then I can practice. That's not how we're practicing here. Each moment is worthy of our attention. Whether we're putting on our shoes to go out for a walk, doing the washing up, doing puja, sitting on our cushion, whatever it is, each moment is worthy of our attention. Why is this so important? Dogen says, if you can't find the truth wherever you are, where else do you think you can find it? And these are real wake-up calls. Come on, wake up. And I'm going to be moving more today into the area of mind, the third satipatthana. What do we think we're doing? How are we doing it? So I'd like to do a little exercise with you now. And I'd ask you all, I need to put on gallery for you for this, to participate. And you need your two hands again. Oh, yesterday we did something with our two hands, didn't we? Yeah. So today we've got our two hands touching like this, the tips of your fingers touching. Okay. And you need to experience this for yourself directly. Nobody else can communicate the truth of this exercise. You have to actually be doing it. Now I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'd like you to nod or shake your head. Yeah, because you're all muted, so you can't say anything. I won't hear you. But I would like to have a sense of your answers to my questions. And it's either a nod or it's a shake of the head. Okay. Can you feel the tips of your fingers touching? Great, I'm seeing nods. Do you know the tips of your fingers are touching? Excellent, excellent. 3rd question. Was that hard? Okay. Okay, thank you, thank you. We were all mindful. How much effort did that take? You all shook your heads. It's not hard. So if you find yourself efforting, trying to be mindful, call this little exercise to mind. Yeah, it's just this. Experiencing it, feeling it, and knowing it. Then we are mindful. So before I move on to that, this mindfulness that we've just experienced, as I've already said, is in the service of liberation. How can that be? And in the context of Satipatthana practice, mindfulness in the service of liberation means being aware of whatever's happening in any given moment without aversion or attachment. That's the essential practice. Being aware of whatever's happening in any given moment without aversion or attachment. So we're relaxing the strain, which is in effort, of reacting to what's there through the aversion, through the attachment, the push-pull, the strain of wanting, not wanting. Yeah. Last night we heard in our beautiful Buddha puja a plea to the Buddha in the entreaty. Please, man of Shakya, free me from confusion. Please teach me the way of detachment so that I can know it as it is, so that I can live in this life in the peace and independence which is as free as the air in space. Beautiful, beautiful. And yesterday morning, in the presentation, we spent some time reflecting on our body, how we treat our body, how we see our body, how much we take it for granted, how much we don't take it into consideration as part of our practice. And we began to look at the body in a different way, through a different perspective. So looking more inside the body rather than at it as me or mine. And we were taking more on board a perspective of non-attachment. And this is the, if you like, the attitude that will take us towards detachment. In the scriptures, there's the use of the quality of disenchantment. We can become disenchanted with that which has been so fascinating and so attractive and so the center of our being, you know, this body, for example. This non-attachment is the crux of the path to liberation. We've already heard in the sutta the lines, free, remain, how important it is to remain free of desires and discontent, so as to dwell independently without clinging to anything. So there it is again, independently, free. We want to become free women. Yeah? We want to be available to the world as free women, to act out of compassion. And attachment manifests in craving aversion. Attachment, greed, attachment is the second noble truth. There's this direct connection to suffering. It's the cause of suffering. And this craving, aversion, pull, push, all of this comes together in this notion of clinging, which is the bottom line of Satipatthana practice, without clinging to anything in the world. This is the Dharmic perspective that we're going to be traveling along, incorporating more and more. I just have to get myself sorted because I've put the piece of paper I was using in a different place. Here we go. Found my way back. A little bit of mindfulness goes a long way. Well, that's nice, isn't it? One of my yoga teachers, she says, a little yoga goes a long way. And I think we could say that in mindfulness too. A really good friend. Okay. So I want to talk this morning a little bit more about two modes of mindfulness that we're going to be putting into practice as well. And the one mode of mindfulness is consciously, intentionally turning attention to something in our experience. We could formulate this as establishing mindfulness, establishing ourselves in mindfulness. And this is what we've already learned from the definition, staying with experience, with our four friends. So connecting to experience. This is what we heard in the poem. Yeah. This is what we did in our little exercise. You connect to experience. You make contact. You know it's happening. You develop interest. And you hold it all with ease. And establishing mindfulness like this helps us to settle and strengthen the mind. So moment after moment of mindfulness is also a way of developing concentration. Giving them, as we know, when we do concentration practices, we give the mind a focus and the energies gather around that. And these moments of mindfulness serve the same purpose. So that's the first mode. The second mode we could call resting in awareness, just being mindful. Relaxed receptivity. Just aware of whatever's manifesting at any of the 6 sense doors. It's just aware. It's also, we could also call it open awareness. So we haven't consciously turned our attention to a particular thing. It's open awareness. This is what I'm describing here. So experience is just flowing by, coming in, flowing by like a river. Resting in awareness, in open awareness, is the being mode of mindfulness. That's what I talked about a few days ago about, rather than doing mindfulness, it's being. We first need to make the connection with it and establish ourselves in it, and then it's being with it. And there is a flavour to open awareness. That's how I'd like to refer to it. A taste, the texture. It's open, yeah. It's soft, receptive, and alert. And applying these 2 modes of mindfulness just gives us more tools, if you like, to play with in our practice. Because if you remember in the refrain, the 3rd instruction is being mindful for the purpose of continuation of mindfulness. So we want to find ways of being with our experience, being with our mind, body, of maintaining awareness, maintaining mindfulness, staying in this flow continually. And we forget in between, but you come back to it throughout the day with any of your activities. So today I'd also like to encourage you to pay attention to being mindful outside of formal practice. For the continuation of mindfulness. Whatever you're doing, aware there is a body, there is breathing, there are feelings, there is mind, there are thoughts, there are emotions, there is life. So just being with that as it is right now. And I'd like us to also become more familiar with how the mind feels when mindfulness is present. When this quality of mindfulness kind of is in the, if you like, in the driving seat, although that's a bit too active. I think it's the driver and the passengers and the whole vehicle. So when mindfulness is present, just now and again, be curious. What's the texture of my mind when mindfulness is there? And again, you can just open up, sense into it, play with this, get to know mindfulness as your friend, and become intimate with mindfulness. Which means, and this is the territory we're moving into, becoming more intimate with your mind. Befriending your mind in whatever state it's in. So this is a training for moving more into this territory. And this is actually when we start to get a flavor of this open, soft, receptive alertness, and we're in the present moment, then we discover the subtle pleasure of being in the present moment. It doesn't need to be joy. but there's a subtle pleasure, and I would say a deep contentment or satisfaction, because this is it. This is the moment that carries the potential for discovering the truth. It's nowhere else. Okay, so we're going to practice this in meditation. And I'd like to just say a little bit about the meditation before we actually do it. To practice these two modes, we will first turn attention towards the body, using the contemplation on anatomical parts as our way in, which we'll simplify to just skin, fleshy parts and bones. Yeah. So we're going to be just allowing our awareness to kind of flow through the body. We're going on a little, we're moving intentionally through the body, aware and knowing, that's there. So for example, we'll be starting at the head and we'll go down to the feet, and then we'll go up from the feet to the head. It's not a body scan where you have you're being asked to go into the body. It's not like that. It's just like we did with our fingers. Yeah, aware of the head. There is skin. Skin on the scalp, skin on the face. That's all. And then we go down. So this is consciously turning our attention to a component of the body, skin. And then we'll do the same with fleshy parts, muscles, the blood, all the fleshy parts. Yeah? And then thirdly, we'll do that with the bones. And I'd like you to just try this out. It can be a very helpful way to focus the mind, as well as to establish mindfulness. And then we'll move into open awareness. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps, the last thing to say about the meditation, that if you do get caught up or distracted or lost, especially in the open awareness part, and the mind just kind of wanders off. What am I supposed to be doing now? Give the mind something to do. Yeah, so that's the beauty of these two approaches. Then, if it gets too sort of wishy-washy or wobbly, it's lost its shape, it's lost its way. Come on, what about if we just check through the body again? What about if we return to our anchor? Yeah. What about if we just focus on whole body mindfulness? Not even focus, but be with whole body mindfulness. So you find some way of enticing the mind back, not forcefully, but playfully. Okay. All right, so make yourselves comfortable. So as you take up your meditation posture, notice the effect of putting the body intentionally in this particular shape, in this relationship to gravity, the effect on the mind. Allowing the mind to settle, allowing the body to settle, relaxing, noticing what's there, allowing it to be there. You might just get a general sense of whole body awareness, not going into detail or depth, a sense of embodiment. Or in some other way, grounding, and opening up. And now we'll turn our attention, our interest, to the body as consisting of, being made up of skin. That's including hair, nails, fleshy parts, and the bones. Starting at the head, just aware of the head, skin of the scalp, and the knowledge there is skin there. Aware of the skin on the face. Knowing there is skin. And the neck. Aware of this part of the body covered with skin. moving to one shoulder, skin, the upper arm, skin, just aware and knowing it's there, not needing to do anything about it at the moment. The lower arm, skin, and the hand, skin, moving to the other shoulder, skin, the upper arm, skin, the lower arm, skin, the hand, skin, and turning our attention to the upper part of the trunk, whole chest area, and just very lightly aware the skin, the front of the chest, knowing there is skin. The sides and back of the chest, skin, and the lower half of the trunk, the belly area, arriving there, knowing skin. Moving round the sides to the back area, back of the pelvis, skin. No pressure to be feeling anything in particular, anything special. Just aware and knowing. And moving to one hip. Skin around this whole area. The upper thigh, skin. Lower leg, skin. And the foot, skin. The other foot, the other hip, skin. The thigh, skin. Aware of it, knowing it's there. The lower leg, skin. And the foot, skin. This whole body covered with skin. Seeing it with an attitude of non-attachment. It's just skin. And then starting at the feet, choose one foot. Now aware of the fleshy parts of the body, the muscles, the blood, the sinews, the organs. Turning our attention to the body as seen through its fleshy parts, the foot, flesh, aware and knowing the fleshy parts there. The lower leg. The upper leg. Fleshy parts. The upper leg. Flesh. And the hip. Flesh. The other foot. Flesh. Lower leg. The upper leg. Aware of fleshy parts, knowing that is the body. And the hip. Flesh. And choosing one hand, fleshy parts in the hand, and knowing them. The lower arm, flesh. The upper arm, fleshy parts. And the shoulder, flesh. The other hand, flesh. Lower arm, flesh. the upper arm, fleshy parts. And the shoulder, flesh. The lower half of the trunk, the belly area, front and back, fleshy parts there. Just aware of them, knowing they exist. Not getting caught up in detail, in commentary. And travelling to the upper part of the trunk. Fleshy parts. And the neck, flesh. The head, the face, aware and knowing there are fleshy parts. This whole body, its nature made up of fleshy parts, organs, muscles, sinews, blood, water, and the rest. With an attitude of non-attachment. That's the nature of the body. And then starting at the top of the head, bones. The neck, bones. Both shoulders, bones. Aware and knowing they are there in this part of the body. Both arms, the upper arm, bones. lower arms, bones, and the hands, fingers, bones. The top half of the trunk, bones. The lower half of the trunk, bones. Both hips, aware of the bones, knowing they are there. To the degree that that's possible. The upper legs, bones. Lower legs, bones. And the feet, bones. This whole body held up by bones. Taking an attitude of non-attachment to the bony structure of this body. Just seeing that is the nature of body. And for a moment we reflect. How would it be to see the nature of this body free of desire, free of aversion, without attachment, while still appreciating it, caring for it, and being grateful that it's there? And we now open up into relaxed receptivity, allowing the mind, as it's become steady, stable, focused and mindful, to now change mode. Just being aware in a relaxed, soft, receptive way. Nothing in particular to focus on. Present for whatever is happening at any of the 6 sense doors, be it in the mind or in the body, in the physical senses. Knowing the flow of change. Without clinging to anything. And as we bring the meditation to a close, it might be helpful to ground yourself again in whole body awareness, or in the breathing, or in a part of the body. Just taking a deeper breath can bring us back home. Okay, so we'll have a break now. Till the maths. Let's actually have a break till 25 to 1. No, 25 to 12 for you. Yeah, so it's contact.
You're not alone.
Okay. I hope that meditation gave you some impression of or taste of these different modes of awareness, different modes of mindfulness. The body scans were, well, now I've said it. I didn't want to say that word. Yeah, this letting the mind move through the body can be done slowly. They can be done much quicker than I did them, depending on how stable your mind is when you enter your meditation. Does it need more time to settle, to develop some degree of concentration, in order to take this perspective, and then just open up into the relaxed, open awareness? Or is your mind ready? And you could go through quite swiftly. And it is not a body scan as we usually know it. I hope that's become clear. You can't feel your organs, but there's an awareness, and I know where my heart is. I don't have to look for it. I don't have to sort of feel it, or my liver. Well, some anatomical knowledge, but that's the whole point. And it's like the mind is moving through the body. I think that's a better description. Towards the end of the week, I'll put that meditation in a context. I'll leave it there for the time being. And for the rest of the morning, I want us to begin to turn, I'd like us to turn more towards the third Satipatthana, which is our most precious gift, mind, yeah, heart, mind. And it's not that we haven't been working with our minds, we've been working with our minds all the time, but now it's like we're looking the mind right into the eyes, looking into the eyes of the mind, if you could say that. Because this is what we're about in our Dharma lives. It's heart-mind training. We are training the mind, freeing the mind, opening the heart, as I've already said. So in the third Satipatthana, the third foundation of mindfulness, we are looking more directly at the mind and into the mind, similar to the attitude we just practiced, this attitude in a way of, that's not me, yeah, an attitude of not identifying with the mind as that's self, that's who I am, that's the me project, yeah, it's not, yeah, this is one of a number of components, the mind. But it has such power over us. Yeah, I get excited when I start to talk about the mind. Well, I get excited about lots of things in Satipatthana. Just to say, tomorrow I'll be moving, most likely tomorrow, we'll be looking at thinking more. Yeah, there's power that we give thinking. And yeah, fascinating area. But for today, a sort of more general bird's eye view over the mind. We talk about transforming the mind. In order to transform the mind, we need to know the mind. And that's the nitty-gritty of this third foundation of mindfulness. And even just knowing the mind is not enough. We need to also change our relationship to the mind and look more clearly at the mind. Yeah, investigate it, know it in a different way. So the terrain of chitta, yeah, heart, mind, includes the whole of our, we could say, what is not body, yeah, is mind. The internal experience, the thoughts, yeah, images, perceptions, the moods, emotions, volitions, mental states. Yeah, you're calm, that's a mental state. Yeah, the mind, you're concentrated, it's a mental state. You're bored, you're confused, that's a mental state. The mind can be expansive, it can be relaxed, as we've been practicing. It can be tight and narrow, contracted. This is what the sutta talks about, yeah, these qualities of the mind. And knowing what state your mind is sort of the beginning of it. And the whole area of thoughts and thinking, you know, memories, fantasizing, all of this there, loads of potential to take us away from what's actually happening. Yeah. And this includes, and this is the Buddha talks, there's a sutta just on this, noticing wholesome mental states and unwholesome mental states. So we are aware of what's beneficial and skillful and is onward leading, yeah, and what are the unskillful mental states, manifestations of greed, hatred and delusion, and identifying our own particular individual manifestation of greed, hatred and delusion. The manifest how this kind of, it's a visceral, it's an inner right? It's a mental, it's this pull, push, wanting, not wanting, yeah. Or the not knowing is like just circling around, and you just stay where you are, you know. It's just as bad as pushing and pulling. And what you can do, what we can do as a practice during the day is not so much going into the content of your mental, emotional landscape. Oh, it's about this, it's about that. But it's more aware of what is the backdrop, the mind backdrop. So is this what I'm experiencing? Yeah. In English, in German, I'd say, ich bin genervt. I mean, the way I say it communicates its meaning. Yeah, I'm a bit fed up at that. I'm a bit irritated. Or I don't want that to be happening. So the backdrop to that, those kinds of complaints or nagging or reacting, is just there's aversion in the mind. And that's all we need for the moment, for the time being, to note, aversion is there. And then smiling kindly, yeah, recognizing there's a defilement in the driving seat that's coloring whatever's going on. And, we get caught up in what's going on, tied up in it and in the content. And then that leads on to being right or wrong and opinions and all the rest, which we're very, very familiar with. So this backdrop. Or you might notice something else going on in your experience, this pull. Yeah, also, you can also feel it kinesthetically, physically, and then just pausing inwardly for a moment. Is there greed? Is the backdrop to the mind greed? So it's this kind of moving towards, pulling away, or just going round in circles would be some kind of delusion there, ignorance, or blocking out. And in this area of practice, it's really important to become aware and to know which mind states lead to suffering and which mind states lead to happiness and liberation. I mean, that's the crux of the matter here. And in the third Satipatthana, the Buddha encourages us to become aware of what's present in the mind and what's absent in the mind. So it's not all about what you've got and what you can do. In a way, it's also acknowledging that something is absent. So there can be an absence of distraction. Yeah, there can be an absence of aversion. There can be an absence of greed. When the mind heart is expansive and loving, content, there is an absence of contraction and aversion. And there's value in knowing that, because we're sowing the seeds of freedom here. There's a seed of freedom. My mind, my heart is not contracted. It is not victim to aversion right now. And we're looking out for and becoming more familiar with the wholesome, beautiful mental states. That's this retreat is just so beautifully, I find, flowing the morning into the afternoon into the evening, and then we kind of come full circle and we go around, we do another round and we see what comes up. And our metta practice in the afternoon, our devotional practice in the evening, it's like giving these beautiful, wholesome mental states space to unfold, giving them attention, appreciating their value, and allowing them to become part of our experience. the Buddha has tamed his mind. And I wish I had the quote here. It's somewhere amongst all of my pieces, my notebooks. There's a quote where the Buddha talks about, I know of nothing more beneficial to freedom than a tamed mind. That's kind of the pith of it. And I know of nothing more that causes more suffering than an untamed mind. So it's really important for us to be interested in our mind, what's going on in our mind, but even more so how we're relating to that. And I think it was on my first Satipatthana retreat, it's about 15 years ago now, I heard a quote in a talk, and the quote was, it was from the Majjhima Nikaya, what we frequently think about or ponder on becomes the inclination of the mind. Now, what we ponder on, what we frequently think about, becomes the inclination of the mind. And that just completely threw me for six. It just opened up my eyes to, at that time, a strong inclination of my mind, which was the fault finding that results from perfectionism. My friends know that I have a tendency, my mind has a tendency to perfectionism. And I've really worked with this. But what was the painfulness of this was not realizing, not knowing or being aware of when my mind became narrow or negative, caught up in fault finding. You know, I was definitely, the cup is half, half empty. The cup was never half full, it was half empty. It was always, oh, what could we do better? You know, and this comparing, it's the breeding ground of conceit and of pride, and just becoming aware that, gosh, that's, the more I do that, or if I don't curb that, for the Germans, you know, that means if I don't tame it, if I don't get a hold on that, that's going to continue being a driving force in how I relate to the world. And I definitely didn't want to, definitely didn't want that to go on. So what this teaching of the Buddha, how it landed with me is, it's possible to incline my mind to the positive, the wholesome, the beautiful, the cup half full. And that was just, it was a revolution for me. It was a revelation, and it was a revolution. And I took upon, I kind of took an inner vow, yes, that's where I want to go. And I can do that. I can train my mind. I can incline my mind towards that which is in the service of liberation. On an order convention some years back, I think an order member had given a talk, and it was on the mind. And then Bhante came to the microphone many years ago, and he said, we should be watching our minds all the time. Wow. Now, if we do that in a forceful, strained, willful way, we're going to get really tired and fed up and lose any joy or pleasure in our practice. So we have to find out what is the quality of watching our minds that's appropriate for me in my life. I'm referring back to the beginning of today's session. Your degree of effort, the gentleness, but also the clarity. And what I haven't introduced so far, but maybe some of you do it as part of your practice anyway, is at the beginning of your meditation forming an intention for this sitting, and ideally with some altruistic aspect to it. I'd like to read you something from a Burmese teacher, U Tejaniya. One thing you need to remember and understand is that you cannot leave the mind alone. It needs to be watched constantly. If you do not look after your garden, it will overgrow with weeds. If you do not watch your mind, defilements will grow and multiply. The mind does not belong to you, but you are responsible for it. There's a kind of playfulness in that. So let's not get too heavy about the mind. No, I'll wait. I'm talking to myself now, as Viridi would tell me later. At that moment, you talk to yourself. Prasadavati. Just finally, I'd like to refer back to the Bahya teaching in the heard, just the heard, in the seen, just the seen, in the cognized, just the cognized. So here, this is the mind as the sixth sense. And it's on a par with the other senses. So we tend to think the mind, of course the mind is important, but for the purposes of this practice, it's knowing your breathing, knowing the body's position, knowing your thinking, knowing your knowing, knowing your dreaming, knowing your planning, knowing your irritation, knowing your contentment. And what the Buddha is saying to Bahya here is, don't get caught up in ruminating, proliferating, commenting on the content of the stories. We become slaves to the content of our stories and to the views about what we're perceiving. Very, very important to become aware of this, to shine the light of awareness on it. Because here too, the mind will follow its habitual tendency. Where does it go for explanations, justifications, security, and recreating the sense of me? Just becoming aware of that is of such value. It is so freeing. And I'll leave you with Maitreya Bandhu's definition. It's kind of definition of the third foundation of mindfulness. And he talks about the stories we tell ourselves. And how we can meet these stories, just going about our everyday life, when we notice there's some kind of mental, emotional, cognitive state that's got sucking power, or it's overpowering, I'm caught up in there. Stop and say, is it true? is it true? Yeah. Is that really what's happening? So it's like you come back with this question, you come back to this embodied awareness, you could say, or to present moment. Is it true? And from there, then we can relate differently. Okay, that's probably enough for today. I look forward to seeing you later on in the practice. Have a good day.